Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and this evening I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the current state of Warlock in Dragonflight Beta. So, this Friday, in about, I don't know, 36 hours or so, a day and a half, we have the final bit of mythic testing, being Kurog Grim Totem and Teros being retested. And there are a handful of bugs still present for Warlock, some for Destro, mostly Demo. I think Aff is pretty much fixed, but tuning is also at the forefront of most conversations, with Boomkin getting buffed a bit, Windwalker getting buffed a bit, I think Warrior getting nerfed. Class tuning is basically what everyone's looking, it's their main focal point, because the Plus is coming out on the weekends, some classes are pretty big outliers, some classes are trailing behind, and I can say for the most part, Warlock during raid testing has been probably mediocre for the most part. A couple fights like Primal Council and Aeronog, which are stacked cleave-based fights, Demo's done very well on. But Demo was nerfed yesterday as far as that's concerned, with Dreadstalkers being nerfed and Fellstorm being nerfed and also still bugged. But today I want to talk about some bugs and then go over like each class tree, hopefully briefly, with talent nodes that probably use some tuning, some buffs here and there. Just talk about the highlights, like the strengths, and more so, I guess, weaknesses of the specs and bugs, and just figure out all of that heading into, last little bit of Dragonflight here. Now, pre-patch is a few days away, but even with pre-patch coming out, there will still be tuning going on in Dragonflight Beta leading up to launch, and typically Blizzard tunes all the way up to the raid launching. But this time around, we have Heroic and Mythic opening at the same time, which means that things can possibly get pretty intense with tuning, and they have to get it right. There's no Heroic week to say, oh, this class is bugged, or this class is way overtuned, nerf them. All the raid opens at once, so that being said, I want to get a head start on that. So I do want, number one, have a bug list that I've been updating a stream a bit. We'll look at it here in a moment. I'll have a link to it down below if you guys want to check it out. I think I've caught most of the Warlock bugs. If I've missed any, drop them down below in the comment section. And while you're down there, shameless plug, like and sub, it helps out a ton. So number two, the Warlock Central Dragonflight Week War thing on my screen here. My Central Week War that you guys have been asking about. It's available in the Wago for free. It's been up for a few weeks now. Exclamation point WA in Twitch chat, or link to my Discord down below, and just hop in the Week War section, and it will be there for you guys. The link to the Wago. Just sort by date, and it should be there for you. Not helped out a lot with it. Also, as well, he's been incredibly helpful with that, doing things to help me with things I'm not smart enough to do on my own. But yeah, it should be available. It should be working for pre-patch as well. Maybe a few bugs here and there depending on talent builds and legendary interactions, but it should mostly be working. And yeah, speaking of pre-patch, there will indeed be videos going up this weekend, probably starting Saturday, I would hope so. Looking at some talent builds for Warlock in pre-patch. Keep in mind, we don't have the full talents we have in Dragonflight. We don't know about legendaries working. It's going to be a wild ride. So I'm going to do my best with different talent builds and rotations, and well, that'll just sort of be that. Hopefully it works out. So I might make some short videos on the Clips channel, the second channel I started a few weeks ago. Link to it down below. I'm not sure if I will, but either way, the main channel here will have like the full-on videos talking about different builds, where they're good, where they're bad, and some rotation. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Alright, so getting into the actual bugs, once again, I have a spreadsheet for them. Most have been resolved. The spreadsheet will say if it's been resolved or not. It is a bright spreadsheet. Flashbang warning, it's coming. Get ready, here it comes. Okay, so there are a lot of bugs early on with the class tree after Modestro. Most of the class tree, basically all of it, barring synergy, has been resolved. And to be honest, I haven't even tested synergy this build. It might even be fixed. If it is, I'll put a note in the video and editing somewhere. But you can read over the gist of it if you want in like the actual link down below, but the big things that are still bugged for the general tree, Grimoire of Synergy, the talent, if you take it, it is not giving you any kind of effect if you run a Grimoire of Sacrifice. Now, Sac's actually pretty decent in single target now. I believe they might have increased the damage or the proc rate on it. Currently on retail, Sacrifice, if you're playing Sacrifice and Sack a Pet, Synergy will indeed proc on you just randomly based off of cast. So I'm not sure if it's intended to just not be a thing, or an oversight, or a bug, but that's one thing that is actually pretty relevant from the general class tree for basically every spec. Well, Aff and Destro, Demo won't stack a pet, but still, losing a flat 10% damage buff that lasts 15 seconds, it's like a trinket effect, essentially. So that certainly needs to be looked at for the general tree. Outside of that, the Fellanders had some issues kicking spells. I believe it's been fixed by now, but I haven't checked it recently. It was going on cooldown, but not like actually kicking the mob, and it wasn't some out of range thing or anything weird. It was like it was in front of it, but not actually kicking the mob. So besides that, for the most part, the class tree's been resolved. So Affliction. Now, Aff's had a lot of bugs. Rather Than Agony, Grim Reach, Haunted Soul, Soul Flame, Malefic Afflictions. Thankfully, all of these have been fixed as far as I know, even Pandemic Invocation, Biotank not applying Agony, Sacrilege, not applying Curse Exhaustion or slowing and stacking it. They've all been resolved, which is great to see. Destruction, also burn to ashes. I believe this is fixed. I haven't tested it yet. I know this is still bugged. This is actually fixed. I tested this. Well, it's hard to replicate the actual Ritual of Ruin Master Rituals bug, which when you had 2 points in the ability here, making essentially 10 shards, it would still bug out and stack 13 and then not give you an effect. It would just sit there and not let you cast your Purple Infernal. So I haven't had the bug in testing at all recently, so I'm pretty sure that's actually been resolved, but I'm not 100%. I can't replicate it, so I'm assuming it's probably been fixed. The main bug, though, for Destruction that's actually still around is Channel Demon Fire with Raging Demon Fire. And I can show you in game here actually really quickly. So the main thing is, if you're in AoE, even in single target, if you have like an Immolate active, right? Let's say, for example, I cast a Cataclysm on these mobs, and I'll go right into Channel Demon Fire, right? So Raging Demon Fire extends the duration of Immolate whenever it hits a mob, which, it can pulse on multiple mobs because it has these embers that fly from around it and, deal AoE damage, right? The issue is that when these Immolates tick down into, how do I word this? The range where they were extended from Raging Demon Fire, you'll see it here. So I can theoretically cast this Channel Demon Fire right here, right? When they hit like 5, watch, this goes gray. Right about now. Can't cast it. And that's because the extension from Raging Demon Fire on Immolate is not being calculated, I guess, into Channel Demon Fire's like Immolation application window. I'm not really sure. It's happened a handful of times in Mythic Plus. There's times where you do hold your CDF for a second or two if you're in AoE or in a Havoc window or whatever. And that can actually be pretty problematic if you're planning on catting at a certain point and all that. That's the last known bug that I have actually seen for Destruction. The big thing with Destro, which is it's just bad, doesn't do much damage. So Aff, pretty much good. Destro's pretty solid. 1 or 2 bugs can be fixed pretty easily. Clash Tree is pretty good. The big thing though is Demonology. So, and to be fair, Demon's had some bugs fixed over the past few weeks. There are a few still. So Kazzak's Final Curse. Let me actually do this here. Kazzak's Final Curse, basically, the ability that buffs the damage of your Doom based on the number of pets you have out, which was the legendary in Legion, I'm pretty sure, is bugged. Now, it was partially working last build, but it's bugged again this build. It appears to be gaining the 3 or 5% effect if you put 2 points into it per greater demon, like Vile Fiend and Felgar, but your imps and your dogs, they don't give any kind of damage effect bonus to this, which is actually really big because whether you have a tyrant out or not, you have like anywhere from 6 to 9 imps active with 3 dogs. If you get a tyrant out, there's 18 imps out, 20 imps out with two dog sets. That's a huge increase of doom damage. So one of the things about Demo, I think these 3 points here are actually pretty sleeper. It's been bugged since literal day 1 of alpha, and unfortunately all testing's done now without it working. But yeah, that's one big thing that needs to be looked at. Outside of that, the big things for Demo is really just Fellstorm and Fellstorm damage amps. Now, they did indeed fix Fel and Steel, which I updated here. So it appears that Fel Sunder is still bugged. I haven't tested it this week, but I haven't heard anything about the change coming in. If you have 2 Warlocks in your group, and both try to Fel Sunder, only one will apply Fel Sunder and get the effect. The Fel Sunder ability cannot be stacked. Cannot be applied. One Warlock will be able to apply it. The other one won't. It won't do anything. I guess you can have 2 individual Fel Sunder buffs active at once if there's 2 Demo locks. So one of y'all is losing some damage, and that's pretty unfortunate because it's a pretty relevant ability based around Tyrant damage and Dog Chomps, and it's Fellstorm, it's Demonic Strength, it's literally Fel Might reducing the cooldown of Fellstorm, which gives you its effect. So that's pretty big. And Torrent Armaments. So I believe this has been fixed as well. I'm not sure. Haven't tested it yet. Soul Strike's basically AoEing around your Felguard and not your Soul Strike target, which can be a bit awkward. Most of the time, your Felguard's actually in melee, which is not a huge deal. But at times, if you're using Soul Strike to tell him to go attack something, he'll AoE around him, not a mob when he hits it, which means you're not getting that cleave value. It's sort of minor. It might have been fixed. I haven't tested it yet. I should change this to maybe fixed. Sort of forgot about it. But besides that, the big issues lie in Demonic Strength, Demo 2-piece. So once again, they haven't fixed Fel and Steel. Fellstorm now does benefit from Fel and Steel, but Demonic Strength is bugged. And it's been bugged since day 1 of alpha. So basically, I will pull up my Felguard here. I'll tell him to attack this with my combat log. My Felguard out. I think no, let's get him out. So I'll tell him to attack. He will Fellstorm. Let's have him attack here. Go. Watch the Fellstorm damage. So we're looking at 3100, 3163. It's stacking a bit higher due to Felsunder. I Demonic Strength. That's a crit. 3200, 3300. It's the exact same damage as a Fellstorm. Now, it might be a tiny bit harder. Maybe a synergy proc on him. But the thing is, Demonic Strength makes Fellstorm deal 400% more damage. This is like 2% more damage than the previous one. So it's obviously still bugged, which is unfortunate because it gains more benefit from Felon Steel, from Anilian Training, from Antoran Armaments, from also your 2-piece, which is also bugged, not affecting Fellstorm. So what you're seeing for Demo Lock in raid testing, yeah, the Tyrant was fixed a couple builds ago. They made 2 builds ago, they buffed Tyrant to actually now increase pet damage, which wasn't happening for most of testing. But unfortunately, through all of raid testing, Heroic and Mythic and Normal, we haven't had a working Demonic Strength or a working Fellstorm effect for half our abilities. So I'm hoping this is fixed to be in a hot fix tomorrow before the final testing phase, but I'm not really sure. So, I mean, big thing with bugs, Aff is pretty much good to go. Demo is pretty much good to go, or Destro is pretty much good to go, barring Raging Demon Fire. Demo needs a bit of help still, but I guess the good thing, glass half full, is that Demo's damage, like, even with the Dreadbite nerfs and stuff, it's still better than Destro. Okay, so getting into the, I guess, spec trees and the class tree here. Briefly, class tree, a bug has emerged over the past 6 hours, which I don't know how it happened, but it did. Demonic Circle went from being an ability we got baseline to, I guess, just not at all. You have to talent into it now. It was working literally yesterday morning. I don't know why it changed over the last 6 hours. This was previously a permanent node you were just given at the start, but now you get a talent into it. Hopefully it's a bug. I don't know what's going on with that. The class tree overall, though, like, I don't think it's bad. It's just sort of bland, right? Previously, we had Pact of the Imp Mother, Pact of Anilion, and Pact of, I think, the Eridar, which increased the Hand of Ghoulin damage, increased Imp damage, increased other effects for each spec. Those are removed. Our damage-based abilities being like Demonic Inspiration, Wrathful Minion, working with Sack now is nice, Synergy, Soul Conduit. They're all fine. They all bring some amount of damage, right? The big thing with the lot class tree is that you just can't die. You literally are a walking tank. We have enough defensives where in a 25-man raid setting on Kurog Grim Totem, we had an ability that was a raid-wide soak for over 1 million damage. I can survive that on my own. There's no immunity. You can just DR everything and survive that. You're a walking god. You can't die, which is sort of cool, but at the same time a bit boring because survivability DRs at a certain point. You might be at full health, but your whole raid is dead. It doesn't really matter. But either way, there's a lot of utility in the class tree too. Shadow Fury, Shadow Flame if you want it, Banish. I mean, obviously Gateway, right? Sweet Souls being some more throughput. A lot of defensives in like Dark Pact. You have reduced CD on Dark Pact, reduced cooldown on wall or a shorter wall or bigger wall. I'm sorry. And a million defensives down here as well. Now, Soulburn has sort of grown on me. They did add a 6-second cooldown to this, good lord. But you can indeed use this. It's still off the GCD. You can use this during another portal at least once every 6 seconds to like get one more summon out in a sense. It's not terrible, it's fine, but not really an ability I'd rely on for any kind of DPS. The main like focal points of this tree though, like the 2 big things, Synergy needs to be fixed to work with Sacrifice. Sacking a pet and having Synergy not proc at all feels really bad. You're wasting 2 points in your tree here, and that devalues Sacrifice, I feel, a good bit for Aff and Destro. Sack is good in single target for Aff and Destro, but if you're removing a 10% damage increase for 15 seconds, essentially a good trinket effect, it's probably not as good as it may seem. The other ability here is both Summon Soulkeeper and Inquisitor's Gaze. These are both just terrible. Like, I mean, they're cool thematically, like they're fine and everything, but they are just very, 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 very undertuned. I hit a dummy here for a little bit. See if I can find it here. Maybe somewhere, I don't know. I don't know where the actual damage event is here, but yeah, here. So I have my eyeball out. The eyeball hit for a solid 1.9% of my damage, which is actually twice as high as I've seen anywhere else. It's like 1% of your damage, and for being a capstone node in single target, it should be at least like 3 or 4%, I feel like. And as far as Soulkeeper goes, this thing is so undertuned in AoE, you just play the eyeball everywhere and don't even care. Hitting this button is not worth the GCD and the cast time in AoE. It needs a buff in AoE. this needs a buff in single target. But besides that, the class tree is just you're a walking tank, and that's just sort of how it is. So, moving on to Demonology here. I don't have a whole lot of problems with the demo tree. So just off the bat, Guillotine was nerfed. They fixed the quadratic scaling on it, which means like previously Guillotine would hit every mob. Okay, how do I word this? Guillotine used to work in a way that every mob that the Guillotine was hitting would pulse onto other mobs. So if you had a 20 mob pull, you had 20 mobs all pulsing onto one another, which meant you dealt an insane amount of damage in burst with Guillotine. The unfortunate part is it was fixed recently. It does very little damage. It's like 4% of my damage in AoE. It's pretty bad. Probably could use some buffs, being a capstone trait in AoE. Thematically, it's really cool, but unfortunately just not really the best when it comes to, honestly, comparing it to what it used to be, which it used to be bugged, but overall just not very solid overall. So besides that, there's not a whole lot with the actual the demo tree that I'm pretty disappointed in. Doom and Kha'Zix being bugged, obviously a bit unfortunate. I do wish Stolen Power were somewhere else. I think this is really good for the DB build, but unfortunately going through Portal is not really where you want to be. They're sort of like counterintuitive in a sense. They're just not really... Nether Portal doesn't really synergize with Demon Bolt build very well. Like, you end up playing... With that build, you end up playing... Switch to it here briefly. You end up playing a mix of like Power Siphon and Fell Covenant, and obviously Shadows Bite's good with that build too, right? Sack Souls. And the point of this build is to have like just big mass like pets out. You're playing Wilfred's or Grand Warlock's design for just more pets out, more frequent extensions, more pet damage. But the big thing, that feeds into Sack Souls, right? Which means Demon Bolt damage. Demon Bolt, Demon Bolt, Demon Bolt, Demon Bolt, and I mean more Demon Bolt procs here. But at the same time, this is like the bread and butter in a sense of like, you want a big bolt, this is it. But unfortunately, it's gated behind Nether Portal. And while I would certainly justify, putting one point into this if possible, having to go through Portal to get this is really unfortunate. It's probably a bit too late for talents to be moved around a bit, especially a 1 point talent here. I don't think putting it here is a good idea because this is good universally, but I do wish this was in a bit of a different spot just because of, Portal. So speaking of Portal, putting aside the Demon Bolt build here, obviously rotationally Portal is not most exciting. Depending, 3-minute cooldown, planted like 15-second duration, you can't really move a whole lot from min-maxing it. Obviously this is like beating a dead horse, but we've talked about it a bunch. The weird whenever you spend shards clause on Portal and not like X demon summoned per shard spent really is a turnoff to a lot of players for demo, which I mean I'm a fan of Portal. I don't like the rotation, but I can get around it in a sense. Obviously, it's not optimal. You can cast 3 Shadow Bolts in one hand versus 3 Shadow Bolts in 3 hands. If it was changed to essentially do the same thing. But, I mean, it's what it is. Fingers crossed for some changes, but with it being this late in the beta, it's worth mentioning, but probably not going to happen. So, there's that. To be fair, they have to also change Ner'zhul's a bit around that, and obviously Pit Lord tuning is maybe coming a bit too, but... Yeah, so Portal, Stolen Power, Guillotine needs to be buffed, and like the biggest thing to me, outside of this being bugged as well, is that Reign of Tyranny is supposed to be a decon replacement, but Reign of Tyranny is really bad. A couple of days ago, they buffed Tyrant damage by 50%, which was great for both Reign of Tyranny and Grand Warlock's design, because that meant like both iterations of your Tyrant amp were getting that effect, right? Being a baseline Demon Bolt buff. But unfortunately, Reign of Tyranny is still bad. So while Tyrant overall was pretty bad damage-wise, I think it's acceptable now if you're playing Grand Warlock's design, just because it brings more frequent Tyrant summons, more frequent pet extensions, more frequent 15% damage amps, all that, right? But if you're talented into Reign of Tyranny and you're losing, that minute Tyrant, losing more pet extensions, Reign Tyrants do like 1.5 to 2% more than your Grand Warlock's design Tyrants do. This ability needs some help. It's no longer a Tyrant is bad ability, or it's no longer a Tyrant is bad kind of argument. It's just a Reign of Tyranny is bad kind of argument. Realistically, I prefer to play Reign with Portal. I think, Reign with Portal pets, with Ner'zhul's and Gul'dans with Pit Lord is really cool. A lot of synergy there. And also having minute Tyrant and 3-minute Portal with like 2-minute Grim Felguard is really awkward playing this whole build here. We'll see where it goes, but at this point, like the big things, Reign of Tyranny needs to be buffed, Guillotine needs to be buffed. These are both sort of awkward as far as where they're at and what they do. And Doom/Kha'Zix needs to be fixed, because I think Doom and Kha'Zix is actually pretty sleeper. It's just probably not being tested anywhere because like it's bugged the entire version of alpha and beta. Oh, and one final thing is Hounds of War. This ability is really cool. I like it a lot. I just think the chance is too low. It's 3 and 5%. I get the fact that with you have Dreadlash and FTS and Dreadbite and Shadow's Bite and a million dog amps and Dread Calling, and you also have your third dog permanently and Felon Steel, all these effects that work with dogs. But like even with that being the case, I know it's finicky for tuning, right? Because there's so many effects if you get good RNG back to back, but I feel like 3 and 5% seems a bit low. I wouldn't mind like 4 and 8%, and the ability would probably be a little more justifiable, because if you're playing a single target pet build, you have like 2 points floating around that are just like, where do you put them? Like, do you put them here? Do you put them in like in Inner Demons? Do you put them in Imp Gang Boss? But they don't really feel very impactful. And when you get an actual Hounds of War proc once every 5 minutes or whatever it is, while it is cool, it's impactful. It's probably like one of every 15 tyrants gets like 2 pairs of dogs in it. And if you do, you have to react to it fast enough to actually get them in without expiring. So there's a bit of a skill, I guess, increase with Hounds of War procs with tyrant setup and things. But either way, even when it comes to mass AoE, they just nerf dogs a bunch. I think Hounds of War can have a bit more thrown its way. Maybe 4% and 8% per rank 1 and rank 2. So when it comes to the Affliction tree, overall I'm pretty happy with it, barring a couple talents being a little bit undertuned, I think, damage-wise. So just going down from the top to bottom, number 1 is Harvester of Souls. So this ability is from Legion. It was an artifact ability back then. This ability, while cool, is tremendously undertuned. That ends up being roughly like a couple points of our damage percent-wise. And for being a 2-point node, it does seem just it needs a pretty decent buff damage-wise. The cool thing about a Harvester of Souls is, like, if you're trying to save a point for a different talent somewhere else, you can just go, you know, like Rapture into UA into Xavian Teachings and just skip the Nightfall Shadows Embrace row and just for 3 points, being 3, and just go 2 in the Drain Soul. So there is that, but I don't think that's really a justifiable cause to make it just so subpar undertuned. You have to also go through like either Siphon Life or Drain Soul for ID, but let's be honest, you're probably going through these either way pretty easily. So first off, Harvester of Souls Terrain is a bit of a buff. I feel like Agonizing Corruptions is sort of in an odd spot too, and I don't know what to really do with that, because if you're playing Mythic Plus or after Mythic Plus, right, like chances are pretty high you want to spam Seed and AoE 3+ targets if the pack's going to live long enough. If it's not, you can still Rapture and dump shards, but I feel like Agonizing Corruption being 2 points is just a bit excessive and not really worthwhile. While it does stack Agonies and things, which means that, hey, if I'm seed spamming, the pack's living for longer than, you know, what it would in a +5. But I feel like getting the agony damage ramped up is just not as impactful as spending 2 points in Soul Flame or 2 points in ID, which you can drain Mass Drain with Soul Rot. It's hard to come by points in the plus build. You're trying to like balance out, I want single target in like Nightfall, and I want single target with Shadow's Embrace, or I want both, you know, ID and Soul Flame, and this just feels sort of subpar. I could be wrong, but it feels like you just go Rapture, Seed, and most likely so, unless you're playing more of a Doom Boss and build, just grabbing Seed for initial corruption spread, and that's it. But Agonizing just feels a bit awkward and not really worthwhile when it comes to most AoE settings. Moving on from there, it's like obviously PI is a bit of a point of contention. The damage is okay. I feel like the majority of players are going to just end up taking like Sacrolash unless you're in pure single target. And like the benefit of AF, and even going back to BFA, was that Pandemic Invocation was awkward because like one of the positive things about AF is you can cast spells on the move very easily by refreshing dots. Now, obviously PI rewards you for not doing that, refreshing in Pandemic Window, which, I mean, there's a bit of give and take there. I'm not a huge fan of it. The damage is better in single target than Sacrolash, but in the end, if it's a fight like Teros, which is single target, but a lot of movement, you definitely take Sac, I think, over PI, because you're not going to just not refresh dots and move if you're not doing anything else, right? So you're getting very little PI value. I wouldn't mind seeing a buff to the actual percent given, being 3.33. I wouldn't mind seeing it be like even 6.66, doubling up, Warlock themed, just due to how low the actual shard gen clause is, but I mean, we'll see where that goes. Jumping back a bit here also, I forgot Soul Swap. We talked about this a bunch early on. I think Soul Swap needs to apply Siphon Life when you cast it. There probably are some builds in single target that are playing Soul Tap and playing Soul Swap, and will tap the 5 shards on pull, precast your Haunt, and just go Soul Swap, Siphon Life, you know, drain the 3 stacks of Shadow's Embrace with Drain Soul, PS, Dark Lair, Soul Rot, and start spamming Rapture, right? The thing is, though, is Soul Swap really even worth the investment of 1 talent point just for your opener? And I don't think the answer is yes. even if it applied Siphon Life, it's a sort of a tough sell, but at least it's a bit more relevant in like target swapping ability or target swapping instances. And the one soul shard cost is pretty bad as well, because you can't really inhale dots from one target and exhale them on the other like you could in the past. This is just right up, hey, it's a baseline 4-stack agony, no siphon life, and if you have a UA up, it's going to move the UA for you, which you might not want to do at times. So having it apply siphon life, if you talent into siphon life, it makes sense. You come right out of that node into soul swap, would be smart. You go a long way for it. And I also wouldn't mind seeing them add a max stack agony clause onto it. It'd be nice to also help that, you know, that damage profile of, okay, this ad spawn, like on Dathia, this ad spawned, soul swap. You have all 4 dots rolling and a max stack UA versus like a baby UA, a corruption, and a UA that you might not even have wanted to move in the first place. Going down here, so Creeping Death, love it, it's great. Afflictions is fine, single target dot increase, good to go. Dread Touch is fine too. I know some like the playstyle, some don't. I think it's fine personally. In the end, sure, UA is suspender, but it's not going to happen. The other node here is Doom Blossom, and I think this effect either needs a damage buff or needs some kind of like increased chance to proc based on Malefic Afflictions, because in Mythic Plus, attacks die quickly, and your UA target, you might choose a higher health mob, but it's not like you're going in and hitting Soul Rot and Dark Lair and just AoEing everything down. This takes a setup of like Precasting Seed, Vile Taint, UA, Soul Rot if need be, Rapturing 3 times for a decent chance for the proc. If you don't start Rapture spam, like, you have a very, very small chance of even proccing in the first place. And if that mob dies, you lose all your stacks, which means no Doom Blossoms, which makes it very awkward because you have to move your UA again, right? So I don't mind this ability. I just wish it was like had a higher chance to proc, or had a chance to proc randomly on a target with UA, right? Because if you don't have a Affliction stack at all, it just can't proc. Once again, if you have to move it or the target dies, you're back to square one. So wouldn't mind seeing a change there somehow. This is good. This is fine. These are all fine. This node's not good, but this node's very good. So, I mean, it is what it is. You got to pay the price, I guess. Dark Lair is good overall. Wilfrid's is just not very good for AF. Whatever. Should have been in the class tree. It is what it is. This row is pretty good, too. It's been very impressive. ID with Soul Eater's Gluttony at like 26% haste is like a full stack ID drain in AoE basically every time you have Soul Rot, being half a minute. It's very, very good. And it syncs with Vile Taint very well as well. So this row solid. I will say there's been a bug in the past with Dark Harvest giving 2.5% per target hit, not 5. I haven't seen it recently, but it's a thing on PTR for pre-patch. So hopefully that's sorted out to some extent. But besides that, honestly, I think the AF tree is pretty good. Soul Tap, honorable mention. It's been really good in Plus. It's been not good, really, in most raid encounters. There's a lot of, like, just periodic damage this raid. And even if the change from 5 to 8% soul leech shield, it's actually pretty big. You can tap twice, pretty much, at full soul leech versus 3 times. And, yeah, honestly, depending on the fight, you might not even want soul leech in the first place. So AF overall, for what it's worth, I think it's pretty solid. Wouldn't mind a couple of changes here and there, some buffs and certain things, but overall, I think AF's honestly in a pretty good spot. Last but not least, we have Destruction. I will say right now, Destro is undertuned in AoE and probably undertuned in single target as well. It was good in early alpha, then like week 2, they destroyed it. It needs some buffs. Hopefully when this video comes out, we're getting buffs today before testing, so like in the next 24 hours. I could be totally wrong though. I don't know, we'll see. The big thing for Destro though, for the most part, when I played this spec in Mythic Plus, it feels really good. It flows really well. There's just not much damage there. So we have access to like Roaring Blaze, CDF, Soulfire, Soulburn if you want, and they're all relatively like niche. This being not as niche, I guess. Soulburn being pretty niche. I wish this was in a different spot, because having it below Soulburn means like it's going to be active on only really ad fights where Soulburn is valuable. And Soulfire is hated by most people, but I think Soulburn with like Decimation and even Ruin is going to be pretty good. If Destro is worthwhile, it can be Havoc. It does give 2 shards through a Havoc, does apply both immolates, does do good damage. Besides that, though, there are a couple nodes that I wish were changed a bit, and based on what we've seen for other classes, there's still time. The first thing here, I talked about it a bunch, Flashpoint. Move Flashpoint over here. Like, I'm tired of explaining it. Move Flashpoint over here and put this here. Like, Flashpoint is a niche ability, very good at times, very bad at times. If you have mobs above 80%, the ability is good. If you don't, it is a dead ability. There is no point in having it in the direct center of our tree. It's the direct center, literally, you like in the exact middle of top and bottom, like a very niche ability. This is a universal ability. It's good everywhere. If you get Immolate on a target, you're doing it right. Put Scalding Flames right here and put Flashpoint right here. It even feeds into like the Fire and Brimstone AoE Kata kind of like playstyle. Kata Flashpoint. It makes sense. Like put this here coming out of Kata or Inferno. Put it here. This is like universally applicable. It's great. But going like Flashpoint into like Eradication and Ashing just feels really bad and sort of clunky. Either way, the ability is cool. Like having it around, just not really, well, honestly in the right spot. Moving on from there, so we have Embers here, which is fine, but Embers leads into Power Overwhelming. Now, I call this Power Underwhelming because it's not very good. Consuming Soul Shards increases your mastery by 1% at 2 out of 2 here for 10 seconds for each shard spent. Gaining a stack does not refresh the duration. And that last sentence, I think, is a pretty big deal because obviously, okay, you have this and you have also Chaos Incarnate, which gives max mastery buff to Chaos Bolt, Rain of Fire, and Shadow Burn. But the thing is that I think this ability is much better if you make it, if you remove that last sentence, and maybe nerf the percent mastery effect and put a cap on it, right? So if it's like a passive like maintenance buff of, okay, cast a shard consuming spell once every 10 seconds to refresh the buff, which is a max of, let's say 5% mastery at 5 stacks, cast a Chaos Bolt, or make it 0.5, make it 10 stacks, doesn't matter. Like, make it a maintenance buff. Because what I've seen in testing, I can show you right here, what I've seen in testing is like, let's say I'm hitting a dummy, let's say I'm playing Madness, and we're going into this stuff here, right? I'm hitting a dummy, doing whatever, I cast a bolt, sure, here's Power Overwhelming, 1%, 2%, but I'm nearly out of shards now. Here I go, cast it again, I get 2 seconds of 3% mastery. I can't even get 4% and it's gone. Like, not refreshing the actual buff feels really bad because you get like a 1%, 2%, 3% mastery buff for 2 seconds and it's just gone. I think having it be a maintenance buff of a lesser, maybe same duration, lesser raw percent of mastery makes so much more sense, feels so much better, and wouldn't even scale out of control. Make it a minor, a lesser effect or lesser percent of mastery, but like having a second and a half of 4% mastery is basically irrelevant. It doesn't do anything. Right, and having it be 2 points feels pretty subpar. Chaos Incarnate, great. Unfortunately, it shares a spot with Rift here. Got to see where it goes, just tuning wise and Sims. They're both good overall. This might push you into more of a heavy mastery build compared to like crit haste stuff. We'll see where Sims go. The big thing is our Infernal here too. So you have the option of either Reign of Chaos, I'd assume with Infernal brand for big stacks, or you have actual Grand Warlock's Design being Wilfred's or Crashing Chaos. The cool thing here is that if you're playing Crashing Chaos, for example. Let's say we're playing, let's do both here. Let's just say we're playing Crashing Chaos. We aren't playing Infernal Brand, we're playing Grand Warlock's Design. Destro feels so good opening up in single target in AoE. You are a literal machine gun of Chaos Bolts. Let me pull out the eyeball here. You are a literal machine gun of Chaos Bolts, right? Let's just say we're opening up here, put up some Immolates, put our Infernal down. Your Chaos Bolts cost 1 shard with Crashing Chaos. It's like you put up a Havoc, just machine gun. Madness, Flashpoint procs, 1, 2, you can conflagrate for more, 3. Look at our shards. 4. You keep going. Like, I'm just sitting at max shard cap here, genning shards from my Infernal. Again, you have Soul Conduit procs, you have Immolate ticks coming in. Like, Destro feels really, really good. The toolkit is there. The biggest thing, a couple nodes might be in some weird spots and stuff, but the biggest thing for Destro is that just things don't hit hard enough. Demo can sustain 45k. App can sustain around 45k too. Destro can't even break 40k, can't sustain 40k. Less than that, right? Destro just needs some buffs, whether it's an aura buff or a targeted buff. Rain of Fire and AoE, maybe Chaos Bolt and single target, but the biggest thing for Destro is not even like really bug fixes. Yeah, this is bugged a bit too. The nodes are fine overall though. This being here in the end, not make or break. The spec feels great. You've got Madness, you've got your 2-piece, 4-piece, you've got Embers, you've got big Infernal builds here, right? You've got Roaring Blaze here, CDF, Flashpoint, Rolling Havoc, longer Havocs, Backlash, Kata, Inferno if you want. The spec has everything. It has everything. It has everything, but actual damage, and that's the problem. Thanks for watching, guys. That should just about be everything I wanted to cover briefly for, I guess, all 3 Warlock specs. I've been wanting to make this video for a few weeks now, just covering bugs that are still active and tuning of certain specs, but I wanted to wait until basically as long as I could, and pre-patch is nearly here. The final day of raid testing is in literally 36 hours from now, and, you know, I'm not worried about Warlock, but there are certainly some outliers, and Warlock looks to be pretty subpar, average in a lot of settings. Yeah, the Pit Lord's big, it's cool, don't get me wrong, but that was with double PI and Lust. Normal settings, that's not happening. It's cool to see, but in the end, I mean, I think it's important to draw attention to these remaining bugs and also say, hey, you know, all of our testing of Vault of the Incarnates was with a bug Demonology, and Aff being, or Destro just being incredibly undertuned. So we'll see what happens. They'll be tuning all the way up to Dragonflight launch in the first week or two leading up to the raid as well. So I'm confident they can do it, but they have to get it right because every difficulty opens at the same time, being normal, heroic, and mythic. And if there's a class that's broken, there's no heroic week of like, okay, we can fix that for mythic. No, if it's broken, and that's a problem. So let me know if I'm missing the big bugs down below, guys, in the comment section. Once again, I do know that the 2-piece for Aff is bugged with Drain Soul Interrupts, and the 4-piece is bugged for Demo with, like, Demo Bolt procs and all that. Yeah, so I know about that. It's mentioned, but these are more class-based bugs. Tier will be fixed. So, and while you're down there, be sure to smash the like and sub buttons because it helps out a ton. All this being said, I want to give one huge shout out to my patrons at the end of the video here as well. Thank you guys for all the support on Patreon a million times. Really, really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here as well as down below in the video description. With that being said, thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.